Hey everyone, I hope everyone's doing well today. Welcome back to Old Guy Hi-Fi. Today we're taking a look at Topping's latest ultra-flagship DAC, the Topping D900. At $1,800, Topping swinging for the fences with this one. And it's packed with lots of features and lots of goes intos and goes outas and all that stuff. But the big story isn't really what's going on outside the box, it's actually what's going on inside. So do me a favor, please. Sit back, relax, and we'll get going on this review. Well, before we get started, big shout out to the folks at Apos Audio. They were kind enough to send this unit to me for review. It is going back to them when I'm finished with it. They had no influence over the review. All of the thoughts, conclusions, and opinions are my own. Now, there will be an Apos Audio affiliate link to this product in the pinned comment and video description. So again, thanks so much, Apos. So the Topping D900 Discrete. I'll put specifications over here. It's an interesting piece. Instead of using standard off-the-shelf DAC chips from like ESS or AKM or Cirrus Logic or TI or whatever, Topping decided to build their own converter from scratch, and it's called PSRM, so it's Pure Switching Reference Module. It's a fully discrete 1-bit DAC. Now you may remember I did a review of the Topping D90 Discrete. This is basically the same concept, but they've upped their game and obviously gone for an ultra high-end piece, at least for their lineup. So what that 1-bit DAC means is there's no DAC chip doing the heavy lifting. Everything's built out of individual discrete components, and all of it is controlled by a custom programmed FPGA, Field Programmable Gate Array, and that takes care of all of the internal stuff. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Now, it still has some nice modern conveniences, USB-C, USB-B. We'll see it. You'll see when I show you the back of the unit. It does come with Bluetooth, and it has all the wonderful Bluetooth codecs if you want it. It even works as a preamp, which is actually really interesting. It's got a stepped relay attenuator on it, so it's really nicely constructed that way. Everything is balanced on it. Balanced input, balanced output. And the front display can do a couple of different things. You can make it, be a regular display. Touch sensitive on this. We'll talk about that in a second. But anyway, so it's got a really nice display. But the cool thing is the 1-bit discrete DAC. So let's talk about that. So what's this 1-bit discrete DAC stuff all about? Well, instead of converting digital audio using a multi-bit chip like an ESS or an AKM chip, the D900 turns each sample into a high-speed stream of ones and zeros. Those pulses get filtered and then averaged in a bank of 32 discrete elements. Basically, they took what's in the chip and just put it out on a board discretely. I think I've got some pictures of the inside. I'll show that stuff, because I'm not going to open it up. I apologize for that. Anyway, those 32 discrete elements rebuild the analog signal. So kind of in plain speak, it's a custom way to get super low distortion and insanely clean background noise. It's very quiet. It's a bit like Topping's answer to, R-to-R ladder DACs, but it focuses much more on speed and precision instead of tone and texture. Of course, by them going fully discrete, it's complex. It's probably expensive to build. I mean, at $1,800, this isn't cheap, but it does give Topping total control over how the DAC sounds, and we'll talk about that in the summary. Well, Topping didn't just spend all their time working on the 1-bit DAC. They did come up with their take on a very high-end analog stage. So after the digital conversion, the D900 feeds this signal into what's called a custom IV stage, or current voltage. That's the part that turns the current into a voltage. Now, Topping has built this section using super low noise op amps and hand-picked discrete parts. Now, you can run this just as a straight-up pure DAC, or you can run it as a preamp, and it's got a nice volume control, as you heard, and it gives you 0.5 dB steps, so it can be very finely tuned. It does come with a remote control for all of that. So you could, if you wanted to, use it as the front end, a digital front end running into an amp or a pair of active speakers. It is a very clean design. I think it's very well thought out to an extent. It's very Topping in that sense. I'm sure everything measures beautifully, and I must give them credit. The build quality is really excellent. But let's talk about this 1-bit stuff, because it seems what is old is new again. So what do I mean when I say what was old is new again? Well, If you're old enough to remember back in the early 90s, everybody that manufactured CD players were coming out with bitstream CD players. That was the latest, greatest technology. Originally, when CD players came out, it was a multi-bit system, the Philips TDA 1541 chips and so forth, some of the Burr Brown chips. So what happened is Philips developed this bitstream technology, this one bit. It actually is Delta Sigma. It's really the precursor to Delta Sigma. It was far less expensive than doing the multi-bit DAC chips. That's not saying this is inexpensive to do. This is expensive to do. But it was a less expensive alternative to multi-bit. So eventually that one-bit bitstream Delta Sigma conversion process got put on a chip. TI, Burr Brown, ESS, AKM, even Philips, they put it all on a chip, and that's what we know as a Delta Sigma DAC chip. Well, the idea in this is similar to that original bitstream, but this is a far more advanced version of it. I mean, the D900 uses modern noise shaping. It has a FPGA to control it, so it can do the high-speed control logic, and the idea is to get all of the resolution possible out of, in every drop of performance out of that data stream. So, yeah, it's conceptually related, but the way to think of it is this is a bitstream DAC 2.0 kind of on steroids. So what I'd like to do now is let's take a quick look at the front. I'm not going to go do a deep dive. We'll take a look at the back. I'm not going to go inside. I can't open it up. And then we'll come back and finish up the review. Well, here we are looking at the front panel of the Topping D900. I'm going to go ahead and push the power button. You'll see it go through its wake-up cycle and come to its menu. I'm going to take a second, reconfigure and zoom in on the menuing system. I'm not going to do a deep dive. It's a bit frustrating, but I thought I'd go over just kind of some of the basics with you. So here we are zoomed in on the front panel, and it's very difficult to see, but there are 3 touch indicators right here. So volume control, and you can hear a nice relay stepped attenuator, and your display. So the first button up here, and it's impossible to see, is home, and that takes you into your setup sections, input, output, parametric EQ if you want to. There is, I think, an app for that. I didn't check it out, obviously. And some advanced settings, change the language, factory reset, and a return back to the display. Now below that is a button that shows you your input select. That's all it does. And then the button below that gives you your VU meter or your parametric, dancing light bars kind of thing. Anyway, so that's the menuing system. Again, I'm not going to do a deep dive. Oh, by the way, it does come with a kind of nice aluminum, very premium remote control. So that's kind of nice. Anyways, so let's do this. Let's take a look at the back panel right now. So here we are looking at the back panel. What we've got on this side is the master power switch, obviously, IEC power socket, trigger input output, USB-C for data in, USB-B for data in, Bluetooth antenna. It's got a little nipple thing on it. You have 2 optical inputs, 2 coaxial inputs, an AES-EBU input, and of course an I2S. Now for outputs, you have a fixed line out on balanced, and you have a preamp out on balance. So those are all the connections on the back panel of the D900. Well, in lieu of being able to open the unit up, I'm going to show you some pictures on the right-hand side of the screen of some of the interior shots provided by the manufacturing, and we'll listen to some very lovely incidental music for a few seconds. So I know the question will come up in the comments, how does it compare to other DACs? Well, at $1,800, it's in a kind of a category of its own, and I'll talk about that in a second. Now, I did mention that I had reviewed Topping's D90-III Discrete unit, and this is clearly a step up from that as far as the hyper-realistic and the hyper-detail. It's got more discrete elements, it's got a much better analog stage according to their marketing material, and improved preamp control, and I will give you that relay stepped attenuator is really nice. But if we step out of Topping's lineup and look at something like the Musician Pegasus 2, which is a DAC I really like, it's an R2R DAC for a bit less money. Well, it's about $600 less. And the difference becomes clear. The Pegasus has that liquid, very natural mid-range, that harmonic richness that just feels more musical, more involving, more engaging. The D900, meanwhile, it's all about precision, speed, low noise. It's impressive, but not emotionally involving. They were chasing measurements with this, Absolutely, I can tell. So let me talk about how I tested the unit, and I'll give you my final thoughts overall on its sound quality. Well, I did test it on the desktop, and you saw in the B-roll, and you saw in the B-roll too, I had it in the big room, and I had it connected up. In that particular B-roll, I think I had it running on the Galleon preamp and amplifier. In here on the desktop, I had it running with the A900 headphone amp. That review's coming soon. And then I fed the output of this into, at one point I was using a pair of shit G-horn mono blocks or amps running mono, but typically I ran it with the Cambridge Audio MXW70 balanced out and into a couple of different pairs of speakers. I used the Cambridge Audio SX60s, and I used my Philharmonic True mini monitors. So in the big room, I threw everything at it. 1,800 bucks, this was gonna get a workout, I promise you that. I really wanted to kind of dig in and really get a good handle on how it sounds. So, you know, I did use my Advanced Paris A12. I did use the Black Ice F22. I did use the big Luxman AP507Z. Oof, that's an amazing piece. For separates, I did use, as you saw, the Thomas's amp and Thomas's preamp. I also used the Advanced Paris XA160 Evo, and I used the Pearl Acoustics 7040. The preamps, as you saw, I used the Galleon TSP75. I used the Advanced Paris XP700, and I did use the Black Ice F360. Now on speakers, most of my listening was done between 3 different pairs of speakers. The Martin Logan ESL Impression 11As, or excuse me, the Impression ESL 11As. There's too many names. I used both pairs of Magnepans, the 2.7Is and X's, and that was the 3 speakers I listened to most of the time because they are the most revealing and they're going to let me dig in deep. All my wires and cables were Wire World cables or Advanced Paris interlinks, and I wanted to really get a solid sense of how the D900 responded across different systems, each with their own kind of inherent sound signature. You know, everything from solid state to, you know, really nice tube gear. And I wanted to kind of fill it out, so I really got a good idea of its sound. So let's talk about that. So my final thoughts on this are, it is very well constructed. It is, I'm sure, extraordinarily well thought out if you're chasing measurements. And that's the problem. The one-bit architecture is cool. Again, it's a kind of a throwback to the original bitstream technology, although they've done it in, you know, full-blown. This isn't a cheap alternative to a Delta Sigma DAC. It's an expensive alternative to a Delta Sigma DAC. But I think while it excels in accuracy and transient response and super hyper detail retrieval, it tends to favor that technical transparency over musical warmth or any kind of analog engagement. It doesn't engage me emotionally. It's, you know, I think for someone looking for hyper detail or a magnifying glass onto your source material, streaming, CD player, whatever it is, this will be a great DAC. I would be careful with what I pair it with. I found, for me, I got the best sound out of this with either the Advanced Paris A12 Classic, because that's got a tube preamp, any of the solid state amps with Thomas's tube preamp, that was very good, or with the Black Ice F22, which is a full-blown tube integrated. Those tubes had the ability to kind of take the edge off it. It didn't reduce the kind of the sterility of it, but it did take the edge off and it did make it more listenable. But I still found it to be a bit, it's just overly analytical for me. I need to be emotionally engaged, you know? I really do. So where does this leave the D900? Well, without question, it's one of the most technically advanced DACs I've seen. I'm sure it's the most technically advanced DAC that Topping has built. And it delivers on that promise. The PSRM architecture, the custom analog stage, all the feature set, you know, it's very well thought out and top notch if you're going after measurements. If you love clarity, speed, transparency, this is a DAC that will absolutely blow you away. But if you want warmth or you want body or that kind of analog flow, you might find it a bit sterile. I certainly did. It's not bad. Now, I personally do think it's better than any ESS chip-based DAC in its price range, for sure. And maybe I think AKM DAC chip or AKM DACs in this price range are a little bit better. They have a little more warmth, maybe less detail, maybe less precision, but a little more listenable to me. But if I were spending 1,800 bucks of my own money, honestly, I would pick something like, I'd save some bucks and buy the Pegasus 2, the Musician Pegasus 2. That's great. I'd save some bucks and maybe buy the Live Micro DAC. Maybe the Gustard R26 would be an excellent choice. But again, those are not hyper detailed, super analytical DACs like this is. So you really, you know what, when it comes to DACs, we're spoiled for choice. There's so many good ones. You got to find your own sound. And if super accurate, very technically precise is what you're looking for, you can't go wrong with this DAC. Absolutely. It's wonderfully built. Just not my taste. Well, before we finish up, again, another thank you to Apos Audio for providing the unit to me for review. Again, the unit goes back to them when I'm done. They had no influence over the review. And yes, there will be an Apos Audio affiliate link in the pinned comment and in the video description. Well, there's my take on the Topping D900. This is very well constructed. It is a technological tour de force, and if measurements are what you're chasing, this is probably the device for you. But for me, this thing's far more about precision than it is about passion, and that might be your taste, and that's fine. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you'd consider giving me a like. Hopefully you'd consider subscribing to the channel. Maybe you'd consider hitting the bell to get notified when I put out another video. Possibly share this video to some friends who might be interested in it. I would like to take a moment and thank my current channel members and subscribers for your support. Thank you so very much. As I mentioned, there will be an affiliate link to this product in the pinned comment and video description. There will also be a channel membership link in the pinned comment and in the video description. There will be a link to, although I didn't use any music in this particular review, there will be a link to the Old Guy Hi-Fi Test Tracks Volume 2 playlist. There'll be Spotify, Qobuz, and now Spotify, Tidal, and Qobuz links in the video description. There's also a link to the Community Post playlist area. There's some great music there. There's some additional affiliate links. You guys understand how that functions. Comment, let me know. Would you take hyper detail and speed over warmth and emotion? Let me know. Is that your flavor? You guys should know by now what mine is. Anyway, I think I've covered all the bases on the Topping D900. Please consider liking. Please consider subscribing. Comment. Let me know your thoughts. Follow me on Instagram if you want to. My name is Ed Homewood. This is the Old Guy Hi-Fi channel, and it is now your obligation to yourself to please go put on some music you love, sit back and relax. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful day.